Welcome back, everybody, and today we are going to be painting up some dragon wings. Alright, I lied, it's a wyvern, but they're the same thing, come on. This is going to be some experimental painting, so don't expect fantastic results because I'm learning here just like you. What I want to do here is paint some semi-translucent wings, kind of like what people think bat wings look like. And first step in doing that is to start with a very, very light undercoat or base coat. In this case, since I am experimenting, I decided to start darker than what I thought I needed and then build up to the point where I realized I could finally stop. So I used brown rose and then worked my way up eventually to pure pale flesh. And notice that I am stippling this color on, so we are right from the get-go adding a little bit of texture to our wings. And I'm making the center portion of the wings the lightest in color area. That needs to be more solid. We can be a bit more textured, have a broken pattern towards the fingers of the wings, but we do want a very light color in the center. The important thing to remember at this step is we actually want to paint a lighter color than what we actually want on the miniature in the end, because we're going to be putting a lot of glazes over this color, so it must be lighter. And to be honest, you can probably just airbrush white or ivory onto the wings. It's a lot faster, but again, I wanted to figure out what color worked best, so I'm taking the slow and steady approach. Step 2 is to paint some veins. If we're going to have semi-transparent wings, we're going to see the veins through the wings. That's the whole point of painting them this way. Do your best to paint your veins. Hopefully you can do a better job than I'm doing right here. And the goal, you can kind of hopefully see what we're going to do now is we have this very light color on our undercoat, and we have this fairly dark vein pattern that we're painting on the wings. And so the goal is to blend these together. We're going to be covering the wings here with several coats of glaze. And the goal is to have these veins that currently look like they're painted on the wing, we want to bury them in the wing so they look more a part of the wings. And to do that, we are going to be using a lot of glazes. So make sure your wings are 100% cured before moving on to this next step, otherwise you're going to wipe away your veins. We are going to begin with Game Color Squid Pink, and as I said, we are using glazing here. Glazing means basically colored water. You can have a glaze, I think this is probably up to about 1 to 8 paint to water, maybe it's even thinner than that. You can see I'm putting on 1 coat here, and you can see just a little bit of pink is showing up on the wings. As opposed to here, after 4 glazes of squid pink. Wings are obviously much pinker, and you can see the veins still look like they're painted onto the wings. That's fine because we have a lot more distance to go. This is just our first layer. And to give you an idea of the progress we are making here, to your right wing there is our 4 coats of squid pink, and to the left is just 1. So what you just seen is basically, well, the basics of what we're going to do here. Just a series of glaze upon glaze to slowly build up our color on our wings, and with each successive glaze, the veins that we painted on our wings are going to be a little bit more and more obscured. Also, with each coat, we work our way towards the fingers of our wings. So we're going to have a light colored center, almost near white or light pink, and then we're going to get darker and darker as we get towards the more concentrated membrane area of the wings. And I'm not just using glazing on the wings, I'm using a mixture of stippling and glazing, going back and forth between the two. The stippling not only adds texture to the wings, but also builds up the color a little bit faster than the glazing. So I could do the stippling and then glaze over that to soften it into our wings. So now here is the tricky part of this technique. We had to start off with a color, an undercoat color, that was lighter than what we eventually want on the miniature. And what we want to do with the glazes is obscure the veins but not completely cover them up. So this is a little bit of a guessing game, trying to figure out what colors you should be using. Hi Loomis, how you doing there? And what colors we should be using to eventually end up with the colors that we want on the miniature. So we need to slowly build this up to the colors that we want without losing the vein work that we initially applied on the miniature. It's a little bit of a tricky game. As we get towards the end of the process, you can see here getting really dark towards those fingers where the skin or muscle, whatever, is going to be tighter. You can see our veins that are more prominent in the lighter color, the thinner membrane of the central area of the wings. As we go into the fingers, it comes a little bit more obscure. So we do have an idea of the look I wanted to achieve here. So you can kind of see the veins are a little bit more prominent than what I initially wanted, but it's kind of a proof of concept. It does work. And just to show you, I don't always get the perfect colors every time. With the glazing, you can go back and forth with that. I decided I wanted a little bit more red, so I went back to our gory red glaze to smooth out the wings, obscure those veins a little bit more, and just add a little bit more red. Okay, on to the top side of the wings, and we're going to do this a little bit different. Starting off with the same undercoat of the pale flesh and the veins, I'm actually going to start at my end point here. We're going to begin with charred brown, and the reason for that is that I want to make sure I reach charred brown by the end of this process, and I didn't want to start using too light of colors and then I have to put on a whole bunch of layers to eventually build up to that very dark brown. So I'm painting my end goal first, so I know how to adjust the colors I'm using to eventually reach that color. So the process for the top of the wings is the exact same as the underside, with two differences. First of all, obviously we are using different colors here, and also I decided to go more opaque and more obscuring on the top of the wings than I did on the bottom. Yes, that makes no sense that only one side would be semi-transparent, but I'm trying to show you different ways of doing this, so cut me some slack. The underside of the wings, I wanted a kind of a light pink underbelly color. For the top, I wanted a color more similar to what I used on the skin, but just brighter, a bit more intense. Now, I said in the beginning, this was experimenting. I really haven't done transparent wings on this scale before, so I'm learning as I go here. Because I wanted to go more opaque on the top here, my glazes are thicker. Rather than using like 4 coats of squid pink as we did on the underside, for example here with the Gorgon brown, I only use 2 coats. I have a more opaque mixture. So you would think that that would hide the veins just as well, 2 thick coats as opposed to 4 very thin coats. Actually, the opposite is true. The veins were much more prominent on the top side of the wings with the thicker coats as opposed to the bottom side where the coats were thinner but more numerous, because that color had more time to build up and obscure the veins. I found that very interesting. Something else I learned, that putting down the charred brown first I thought was a good idea. Wasn't a terrible idea, but, well, not really good. I knew the charred brown would be lightened in color by the glazes that we were putting down. However, it also took on a little bit of a yellow hue, which I didn't quite like. So I did have to go back with the charred brown again. At least I can use the same color charred brown to cover up my now lightened charred brown. So that was a benefit. And then we mustn't forget our fingers. You can tell I was kind of slapping paint left and right and hitting a lot of our skin that was already painted. That's okay because I want the fingers to blend into the same skin that is used on the wings. So I just had to go back and retouch some of the base coat of our hand area of our wings and then tone it back down with a little Gorgon brown to blend it into the proper tone. And just as a little bonus tip here, since our color on our inside of our wings was rather intense, decided to bring that color a little bit more into the body so it doesn't just start at the membrane. So using a little bit of red, using a little bit of red-violet, just bringing that color in, glazing that onto the body of the wyvern so the violet-red color starts a little bit before the wings. One last thing before we go. I'm giving the wings a coat of acrylic gloss lacquer. Now my intention is not to have glossy wing membranes. My intention here is something I learned by experimenting a long time ago. And that is, if you gloss coat something before you flat varnish it, it actually looks like you put on like a thin layer of glass or a thin layer of cellophane. So I'm using this effect to just put one more obscuring coat over the wings to help blend in and hide those veins just a little bit more. And with that done and 2 coats of flat varnish, our wyvern is complete. And look at him, he's too big for the photo booth, unfortunately. So I think this was proof of concept. We can use glazing to get a subtle vein effect on wings. However, the execution was a little bit shaky. I think I did go too hot pink on the underside of the wings. Also, I should have left the centers a little bit lighter or more closer to white. So I probably should have gone for more of a flesh tone rather than pink. And on the top side, I already mentioned the fact that I used too thick of glazes on the top. And you probably also noticed I was slapping paint left and right super fast because this guy's been on my desk for like 6 months and I just wanted to get it done. Your results probably should be a little bit finer if you're working on something smaller and you take your time. But at least it goes to show you, you don't need a steady hand to paint something like this. You can just slap paint on left and right and finish this in 2 evenings like I did. So, hope this works for you. Feel free to try it out. Let me know how it works. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Mitchell,
Your eye on the sandwich.
Mitchell,
Heart's pounding.
Mitchell,
Veins clogging.
Mitchell.